Chapter 3 of The Coming People. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Coming People by Charles F. Dole. Chapter 3. Heroism, or the Iron and the Blood. It would seem as if everyone would like the idea of filling the world with gentle, that is, civilized, or if you choose to call them so, Christian people. It may be, however, that there lingers in some minds a real concern as to the character of this coming people. We are the descendants of sea rovers and soldiers. We have been nurtured through many generations on the songs and stories of the heroes. There is no one of us whose heart does not beat faster at the sound of a drum, or at the sight of marching men. The history of the winning of our liberties through several glorious centuries comprises many hard-fought fields in the Old World and in the New. Many of the great and good men of the past, like Alfred of England, William of Orange, Admiral Coligny, and our own Washington, distinguished themselves upon the battlefield. The most familiar type of the hero has come to be the man who can face death without wavering. Is there not a hard and stern element in the life of man? Are there not needful grains of iron in his blood, without the bracing presence of which he would become effeminate? It becomes therefore a perfectly fair question, what effect long-continued civilization will have upon the manliness of the race? Disband the armies, let the white squadrons rust, settle all disputes in a great international court, and how will you be sure any longer to keep the tonic iron in the blood of the youth of this more peaceable world? If men become timid, if no noble occasions ever whet their courage, if manly risks and ventures disappear from life, if anodynes, whether of drugs or mental healing, are found to drive pain from the earth, what is to hinder that most fatal of all kinds of decay, which has repeatedly swept luxurious empires from the face of the earth, and given over their cities to the people of a wild but fresh and hardy stock? So far in the history of the world, the wild men, the fighters, have had a part to play in reinvigorating the race. Up to our time, the hardy and strenuous, the intense and energetic, have inherited the earth. Will it ever be well for the world if those forceful qualities fade out? Are they not bound to fade out under the peaceful conditions of a gentle and really Christian civilization? Before I go on to show how groundless such fears of the effects of civilization are, I wish to express a complete sympathy with the ideal of the virile and forceful man, whom the advocates of the old leaven of barbarism wish to perpetuate. I desire to see no tame and cowardly world which has ceased to have a use for the heroes. I desire not less, but even more, of the tonic iron in the life of man. Our problem, indeed, is like that of the fruit grower who has discovered some rich and luscious variety of apples or pears. It may be that the tree that bears the new fruit is too delicate to withstand the climate. What then if, taking a graft of the new tree, we insert it in the hardy and native stock? What if we can turn the force of the wild growth, no longer to bear small and bitter apples, but the good, rich fruit? So we propose to combine gentleness with hardihood. We have in mind not only men of kindly spirit, but men possessed with the energy and vigor of the best native stock. If we foresaw that courage and virility were to cease or to grow less, if we supposed that in the new regime there would be little occasion or demand for these manly forces, we should wish that our children might have lived and died in the stormy days of Magna Charta or Bunker Hill, instead of praying, as we do pray now, that they may live to see the golden days of the incoming civilization. On the very threshold of our argument, we meet a striking and significant fact to establish a presupposition in our favor. Hitherto, throughout human history, there have always been wild and untried races, hovering over the borders of civilization. For centuries, no man could predict which strange new race might not descend like an inundation from the mysterious north, or from undiscovered continents over the sea. Today, explorers have pushed into every wilderness and island. For the first time in history, there are now no longer new races to reckon with. Everywhere the savage peoples are dying out, or giving room for civilized colonists. Is it not clear that nature has got through with her earlier method of reinvigorating old and effeminate races from the infusion of a hardier, barbarous stock? On the contrary, the world is becoming unified on the lines of civilization. The majestic push from behind is now in one direction, the way of a common commerce, a common body of knowledge and science, similar institutions and laws, by and by also, who shall say not, a common language and religion. However desirable or picturesque some of the methods of barbarism may seem to the lovers of the antique, barbarism is as certainly doomed as were the bear and the wolf when the Mayflower landed at Plymouth. We have to look not to barbarism, but to the broader and more intelligent development of civilization to find the needful means for making brave and noble men. What, then, is this fine and beautiful thing, courage or virility, which we all agree that our coming people must have, as truly as our sea-roving forefathers possessed it? Is it mere pugnacity or the disposition to quarrel, as some might hastily suppose? On the contrary, I assert that virility is the natural characteristic of sound and robust health. Pugnacity is often, indeed, the symptom of weakness or nervous instability. The fretful child is quarrelsome. The vigorous child is good-natured. It is true that energy must find something to do. It is capable of being drawn off into the channels of mischief and even cruelty. But mischief and cruelty do not belong to its nature. Find for the lively boy's energy positive, constructive things toward which to run, and it will grow no less virile and courageous. The point which I emphasize is, that if we want brave men, we must have sound and healthy men. Give us plenty of men, well-born, well-fed, well-trained, men of clean lives and orderly habits, temperate and self-controlled men, precisely such men as the type of the Christian gentleman require, and we will show you more men of virile physical courage than any army that Alexander, Caesar, or Napoleon ever saw. Our Civil War established this fact. There was need of discipline to make an army, but there was no lack of physical courage. Boys who had never been in a fight in their lives, men who came from behind desks and counters, and had hardly smelt gunpowder, were brave enough and very soon well enough disciplined to storm deadly batteries. This latent virility is always abounding in a healthy and well-nourished people. To believe in a good God and to love one's neighbor work no harm to such virility. It is all the more vigorous in a people who believe that, as sons of God, they hold the future in their hands. There is no greater mistake than to suppose that virility needs the exercise of fighting, as if there were no other exhaustive occasions for its use. It is true that fighting has frequently furnished an occasion for the display of courage and hardihood. Quite brutal customs once held in every schoolyard, where boys were trained to fisticuffs and cruelty. But the generation of boys who fought and bullied each other did not necessarily make heroes. They never failed also to produce a due proportion of cowards and sneaks. We do better for our American boys than to urge them to fight one another. There are feats of daring and adventure. There are hardy athletic sports. There are horses to be managed and boats to be sailed. There are 1,000 channels where energy runs, where a quick eye, a skillful hand, and the brave and ready mind to meet an emergency have daily practice without ever the need of ill will or a hostile thought. Is civilization so unintelligent that it cannot educate its sons to manly courage, aye, its daughters also to healthy womanly heroism? Moreover, the arts and the occupations of industry, the pursuits of science, a world-embracing commerce, help to develop the virility of a people on a vast scale. Ships still sail venturesome voyages. Discoverers and engineers still strike out paths through the wilderness and over the mountains. When the colossal network of the world's railway and steamship system, an army of kindly and brave men daily run the risk of death to keep other lives safe. As in the past, so now, a great silent host of women, wives and mothers, face pain and death for love's sake. Barbarism, indeed, with unconscious provision of the great humane laws, taught its heroes to suffer and die, the few for the many. But civilization, facing the solemn facts of life and death with cheerful intelligence, keeps good the ranks of its heroes, bidding the many to live, and if the need comes, also to die, for the sake of the common humanity. I have said that courage is the characteristic of a healthy and well-ordered body. But this is the bare parable and outward illustration of a deeper spiritual fact. There is abundance of physical courage to undertake deeds of daring. There is as yet but little moral courage to match and direct the lower and merely animal kind of virility. The lower order comes first to meet the earlier rude necessities. We have come now to the stage when new and higher needs confront us, and demand a finer form of satisfaction. It is no longer enough for the modern state that its leaders shall be men so brave as not to run away from an enemy. It is not enough for the captain of industry to be stronger than any of his workmen. We want another and more costly quality. We have yet to require in our political leaders that they shall be brave enough to stand alone, and to say the eternal no to the projects of avarice or selfish ambition. We want capitalists of moral fiber to decry and veto the use of bribery and corruption in legislation, and none the less firmly when subtly debasing methods promise for the moment to foster their own selfish interests. If we are to have rich men at all in the future, we are going to demand men of courage, who shall speak out whatever they honestly think is for the social welfare. If in the old times men despised the weakling and coward, will not men come to see that moral cowardice is not respectable? If the big-bodied man, afraid to use his strength when it was needed, was the worst sort of coward, why shall we not rate as beneath respect the man whose money power, or selfish greed of gain or place, takes away his manly independence, and reduces him to the level of the sneak? The truth is, superb moral courage is the crying need of democracy. If mankind had attained sufficient results in virility in the days of war, we might perhaps tremble lest the new civilization, having no further fields for its conquest, should decline to supine ease. On the contrary, the grand attainments are yet before us. There was never so great a pressure on the civilized peoples for the product of courage. Such a demand is itself a prophecy that we are on the eve of a new and forward march. It need not be marked by bloody steps, but it must needs be all the more strenuous and masterful. It will call for brave hearts, who know not the fear of death, or, a harder test of courage, the fear of the face of man. End of chapter 3.